Hey, everybody, welcome to the Med Legal Green Room. I am Sam Frentzas, co-founder of the Driving Force Company. And today we have attorney extraordinaire Michael Coates, and we're going to discuss the human side of trauma, improve patient care and personal injury outcomes. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
So, too often, injured patients are evaluated through narrow biomedical lens that overlooks critical aspects of the recovery injury. Want to get a little formal here. The result can be incomplete diagnosis, delayed referrals, misunderstood symptoms, and difficulty explaining the full extent of injury to attorneys, adjusters, judges, and juries. On top of that, so I wanted to make sure I got as much information that I can pull out of you. So in this episode, Michael Coates, attorney, longtime advocate for physicians and healthcare providers, explores the collaborative biopsychosocial, you had to throw a $30 word at me,
Sorry about that.
model, and why it's one of the most important yet underutilized frameworks in personal injury. I wanted to get that out. What will providers learn today?
Well, I think if you think about when you travel, right, you go to a foreign country and they speak another language, it's a little harder to get around, right, or to understand what you're doing. So communication is so important in anything that we do. But I think especially in personal injury, and what's been missing is to have like common speak that can apply to everybody, where patients can better understand their injuries, where physicians can better get their patients to disclose what they've got and to understand the impact of trauma. And then when you communicate that to the attorneys where they understand this by the same language, then they're going to be able to better communicate it to all the non-medical providers that are involved in a personal injury case. And that's going to be judges, juries, the attorneys on the other side, even their own clients. And so you're bringing this all together so that there's a better understanding, better treatment, better outcomes, not only for the patient, but I think also for the personal injury case.
All right, so why do you believe the biopsychosocial model may be the next evolution in both personal injury medicine and personal injury law?
Well, it's not that this is new. It was started back in 1977 by a psychologist, actually. And it's been more utilized, I think, in the pain physician side, a little bit broader basis. Although when I apply this to personal injury, it's a little bit broader, right, on the last aspect. So if you think about it, biopsychosocial. So what you're hitting are the three key areas of the impact of trauma. So let's break that down. The first is, right, biopsychosocial is the biological. So that's like those physical injuries. You might, from an x-ray, see a fracture. You may, on an MRI or a CT scan, you could see a brain injury. You could be feeling as a chiropractor, you've got out of alignment, a disc bulge. So those are the biologic injuries. And those are the things we're all mostly familiar with, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biological. The second, though, is the psychological. So people forget, I don't know how many of you maybe have been in a serious accident. I mean, I have. And I'll tell you, you're afraid to even get behind the wheel of a car for quite a while. It certainly has changed your perception of things. And there's a fear that comes. You've got anxiety. You've got a lot of PTSD, which has become a growing part of personal injury impact damages that people have not really explored so much before, and there's more experts in the area, and you got some awards and PI cases just on the PTSD aspect. So that becomes part of the psychological. But then there's the last, and it's the one that I think is what makes this so perfect for personal injury, and it's the biopsychosocial model. So the social is the socioeconomic impact, the real life impact of trauma-based injuries. What do I mean by that? When you think about the effect of trauma, so there's kind of three main areas. And once I say this, you're going to recognize them. But this is where they fit, right? So that common communication, knowing where things fit, easier to communicate and to even document, right? So it's the activities of daily living, the things that you do every day, the thing you love to do the most, but you can't do anymore, or not to the extent you could, and you want to get back to that. The duties under the duress, the DUDs, that's your work employment limitations. And then the LOE, the loss of enjoyment of life. These are the real impact of trauma-based injuries. And if you think about some of that impact, let's say you're a single parent mother, you're at home, you've got little kids. You and I both know they may be injured, they may need to go and seek help, But if they don't have any childcare at home, they're going to sacrifice themselves for their children. So when people try to say gaps in care and explain gaps, I think it's one of the beautiful areas to explain things to adjusters, juries, is, hey, we can't take this out of this person's life. Here's what really happened. So if you think about this, the biopsychosocial, it covers 3 key segments, and those are what really matters to a person to understand their trauma, and to the PI case to seek about to get others to understand the impact and for compensation.
Okay, so now we got the why. Let's go to the how. How
Okay.
can biopsychosocial approach improve diagnosis, treatment outcomes, and referrals for providers while also strengthening personal injury cases for attorneys?
Well, I think it gets to there's a need for a whole body assessment. I find that a lot of, and again, I coach, train medical providers around the country, and I champion them even with law firms being a little difficult. And then as I do this, though, I find that a lot of them are missing that whole body evaluation. Like, you've got to evaluate the entire body. That's what helps the attorney. You don't want things that are missed. It doesn't mean you treat it all. You simply have to evaluate it all. And when you do whole body assessment, thinking of biopsychosocial, now you're going to be hitting the referrals you would have otherwise missed. You're going to better understand it for your documentation. And as you talk about it that way, it's going to be clear for your patient to understand, and the other peers that you might refer to, and attorneys. Maybe think about this, because we've got a lot of attorneys on here also. And I think if they would say to all the medical providers, it would be, look, when we're building a case, and I'm not a personal injury attorney. I represent champion only medical providers, but I was on the defense side in PI in my early days. So I was a defense attorney hired by the insurers in medical malpractice defense and personal injury defense. So I was a kind of a different slant on this. But when anybody's building a house and the defense is looking to find cracks in the house and the foundation, and the attorneys are trying to make it solid. So the first thing you start with is the foundation of a house, right? If it's not rock solid, really strong, what happens if it's on the side of the hill or on sand? It sinks, it falls, right? Mm-hmm. So your solid foundation comes from those objective assessments. The great things that driving force does when you're doing a lot of those analytics, limitations on range of motion, the x-rays, the imaging, all those things that help to create that real solid foundation for a personal injury case, right? And that includes even the mechanization of injury and the causation, right? It's all part of that foundation. But let me tell you this. If you've ever gone to go buy a house, I can tell you that your wife, your spouse, or partner didn't go and say, what an amazing foundation, let's get that house. They did it because it had this amazing curb appeal, front of the house, this view of the ocean, the mountains, whatever it has. Or they walk in, look at the size of that kitchen. Look how big the walk-in closet is. Okay, all those things are what makes up the real value of a case, the pain and suffering of that patient, right? And that gets back into the biopsychosocial aspects, those activities of daily living, the duties under duress, the loss of enjoyment. That is that curb appeal, the beauty that really rises the value of a case. But it's where your job as a provider is to bring out that, because you see that patient far more than the law firm ever does. Some law firms now have gotten so big they don't even see their own client unless it actually goes to a trial or a deposition. Other than that, it's other people and paralegal support staff that sees them. Yet, let's say you're a chiropractor. You're seeing that patient maybe 10, 20, 30, 60 times. You're at the ground level of pain and suffering. So if you're not documenting things properly, if you're not getting the patient's health care story with storytelling documentation down, the attorney doesn't get it. They don't know what to get to the adjuster. And when you can do that right, you become a true value driver. And that's what I want all the providers to really get out of this, is to think about becoming a value driver for your patient. And I'd say for the case, but it's not that you're trying to get involved in liability. That's not your role. You're a neutral provider. But by being the advocate for the patient's health and recovery, that's your lane. That you should be doing from the top of the mountain. And then the attorneys, if you can grasp this, if you can get this biopsychosocial model, you're going to talk better to physicians. They will miss less because they've got to understand this, and too many of them don't. I mean, how many chiropractors or others at the rehab level fail to even have concussion questionnaires, right? They're not trying to identify the biopsychosocial aspects involved. So I'd say that if you get into that analogy, you're going to then understand that the benefits that come. So the benefits are going to be you're going to have a far more comprehensive injury assessment, right? There's going to be an earlier identification of other areas not in your skill set. You should be sending out to others those referrals. And we all know the earlier the referral when it's medically indicated, the better it is for the case. Because if you wait, you know what I used to do, the adjuster's going to be saying there was some intervening factor that caused that, not the personal injury incident. So that's why you've got to be on top of this. And that includes, you certainly should not, if an attorney's telling you every case get an MRI, that's the wrong law firm, okay? Everything you should do needs to be medically necessary and medically indicated. But when it is, act right away. Okay, then I want you to embrace what I have termed, so it's a term that I came up with called storytelling documentation for healthcare providers. When you go to see a movie, if the movie is disjointed, they didn't introduce the character right, you didn't have a good bad guy, whatever it was, you don't get into the movie, you don't even understand it. You come out of there going, that was horrible, right? I'm not going to see that again. So imagine a jury being exposed to that. I'm not going to award anything in that case. But when everything ties together, you get behind the victim, the heroes. Wow, what a movie. I want to see it again. You're so enrolled. And that comes from your documentation again, because you're at the ground level of pain and suffering. And then you've got this great ability through all this to connect those functional limitations to the causation by the injury of what happened. So you get this clear, more accurate narrative that works for everybody. And it's going to result in, I know, better health outcomes and better personal injury case outcomes for the attorneys out there that are also listening. And again, I want to reemphasize to the attorneys, yeah, you're not an area that I go to generally help. I admit that. But I think if you understand more of how to help to communicate with providers, to how to identify the good ones from the not so good ones, you're going to be helping your clients, you're going to be helping your case, like when you are going to be referring out.
That's it. As you were talking, I was thinking of a case study of one of our members, and I'm like, wow, it's just hitting on the point where the wrong diagnosis, it would misdiagnosis, no treatment was done, and the Mayo Clinic told her she had mental health problems after whiplash, where the right diagnosis, because she couldn't read, so she had to go learn how to read again, which I thought was really weird. She had vision problems and inconclusive diagnostics. And then she got the right diagnostics, which then they found the C1, C2, did the regenerative medicine treatment, did everything that they were supposed to do, where within a week, the vision came back. She was able to read and 90% better in 1 week. The referral that came from that attorney, which they thought that, okay, just another sprain strain. I mean, even the Mayo Clinic got involved where they said, you need mental health. They circled back with the right diagnosis, the right treatment, the right outcome. And I'm like, wow, that is biopsychosocial, of putting all these pieces together and doing it right. So here's a whopper of a question for you. So if every provider and attorney listening today adopted.
But before the next question on what you were just saying, I think I want to emphasize that it's also on the pain physician side, right? And I speak a lot of the pain conferences, and I find that a lot of things are missed at the pain side too, because everybody kind of gets, you guys are so good at what you do. You guys are just the best of the best at what you do, and that's so wonderful. But the problem is there's a lot of it's like a horse that's got the blinders on and you're just looking forward, right? And you got to open up the perspective and see it all. And when you do, and where you fit, because the other beautiful thing about the biopsychosocial approach that, like you're talking about there, it's collaborative care. The one thing about personal injury is it's generally you're not alone. So they're saying maybe first a chiropractor, has an imaging, maybe an MRI done, goes to a pain physician, has maybe an epidural or might be some surgical procedure, an orthopedist or a neurologist. Then it goes back to rehabilitation care, right? So it's this team care approach. And that's the beautiful thing when you think about a biopsychosocial model, it's all about collaborative care.
Without a doubt. And I was saying that, look, if every provider and attorney listening today adopted one principle from biopsychosocial model tomorrow, what would it be?
I would say first, let me start in the impact with if you're an attorney on your client, or the provider with your patient. So let's start with the patient because the focus is on them, right?
Yeah.
You know, everybody, the provider is there to get them healthy or relieve their pain as best as they can. The attorneys on the financial side, how do we compensate them for the injury so that for what happened to them from this trauma-based injury and the care that they had to have? So I think when you find where everybody can speak the right language in personal injury, if starting at the provider level, and also where the law firms are aligned, right? That means when you educate the patient and they start to think about, okay, what was my biologic impact? What was my psychological impact, if any? What has been my social impact, right? If you talk to them this way, they're going to better understand the impact about their body, their mind, their life on trauma. That means they're going to reveal more, which then you as the provider, now let's shift to the provider, you're now having a better understanding of, oh, here's where some of the injuries or impact or maybe problems on making their treatment is occurring. I can document now better. I can get into my storytelling documentation about their healthcare journey, which is unique to every patient. I have 6 kids, right? Had 7, lost one long ago. But all of my children, not one is the same, not even close. If they can be this from people that were born the same people, raised the same friends would be so different. Imagine the real world with everybody. So that's what I want you to really focus on. I think when you think about your patient, they are unique and you got to find that uniqueness, get that uniqueness in your storytelling and get it down. So that's the patient. So let's move again back to the medical provider. Now that you've got that understanding, you're better with your documentation, you're better with your referrals, you're better as you go to communicate with with an attorney. Here's what's happening. When you're deposed, imagine utilizing this approach at a deposition. I can tell you from being a defense attorney, if you came out going through this, I'd be going, we got to up the numbers that we've got to pay out on our settlement. This provider is going to knock us out of the park, unfortunately, if this goes before a jury, right? So you're going to be a true value driver and awesome. And then the attorneys, you're dealing with a lot of, providers, I think we deal with a lot of medical mumbo jumbo, right? We got to get around and past that. This helps that. For attorneys, it's legal mumbo jumbo. You got to get past that. For all of it, you're dealing with whether it's peer attorneys, judges, or juries. You got to get more into the common speak. And I think for the attorneys, you're also then can embrace this so that everybody, patient, provider, attorney, if you're aligned, I think ultimately now with that communication going, very few things get missed, more things get pulled out, the story is better told, and I think you're going to find personal injury outcomes, the case outcomes, far, far higher and much harder to attack because it's been approached with this biopsychosocial approach to trauma-based care.
That was a mouthful, and thank you for that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 2 things here. One, you're about to find out. So you have a book on Amazon called Personal Injury Made Easy. So for the first 10 people that hit or DM me PI, I'm going to buy them the book and personally send it to them as a thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be on here. So if you're one of the first 10, PI, and I'll personally get the book and send it to you. Second is, look, we want everyone to go to PIMadeEasy.com website. And from there, you tell us what's the next steps, what they're going to get out of it, and what are the advantages and benefits of, look, working with you. For anyone who does see the value in this thing, what do they get?
Great, thanks. And by the way, that's really cool of you that you're, to give some people the book. And I really do think the gift of knowledge is the best gift that anybody can get. And I think
Absolutely.
If you've got a peer yourself, I think go on Amazon, get the book to someone that you care about as a peer to help them, because it really has become the Bible of personal injury for medical providers. And I think for you, the attorney, if you read that, because I deal with good attorneys in it, difficult attorneys, good providers, bad providers, right? I like to think of myself as a truth teller. If I'm going to date myself, the Walter Cronkite of personal injury, right? But when you come as a medical provider to us, there's kind of 2 different services that we offer, aside from the book that I authored. One is to coach you and your team. And I love coaching staff because if you up their skill level, it's going to free up your time and make you better. And it's on 3 areas: processes that are unique to PI, that are difference makers and help to position and protect you. The second is being properly paid. MedPay, PIP, dealing with good attorneys, but also especially dealing with the difficult ones and how to out negotiate them. And I got an incredible method that works around the country like nothing else before. And then growth, because I think growth is marketing and scale. Any business needs all three of those, but especially medical practices needs those three to not just survive, but to just thrive, right? So I want to see that for you. So that's called the Business Advantage Program. The other thing would be a unique service that's an outsource, where instead of me teaching you how to fish, which is the coaching program, I'm going to fish for you when you're dealing with difficult law firms, and I will intervene not as an attorney, but as an extension of your office and negotiate with that law firm on all the matters you've got with them, and you decide the law firms to assign. Now you got the Tiger Woods when he was in his heyday for you dealing with law firms that have proven to be difficult. So whatever you might be, or you just want to send me a note, go to michael@pimadeeasy.com. You got a question, however I can be of service to you. Like I say, I speak around the country a lot. So as you're at your conference, maybe look for me up there. I'd love to meet you, buy a cocktail. We'll drink and talk about personal injury and just about life. Thank you all.
Might just show
Thank
up.
you so much. By the way, I want you all to tell you all, with something like when you've got, like what Driving Force has, when you've got something that is so much better on imaging, remember talk about that foundation, it's going to make everything easier for you. You need that to tell the better story, right? And all this elevates you as a provider, right? It elevates you to help the attorneys. The better tools you have and use is going to make life better for you, better for the patient, and certainly better for the law firm.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I might just, if you're anywhere near town, find you just so I can get an old fashioned out of you at an event. Michael, thank you. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. This is great educating all our followers and listeners in the med legal arena and tapping into your expertise. Remember, hit PI on the bottom. I will personally send you one of his books if you're one of the first 10. And if it's 11 or 12, I'll still do it anyway. And then click the link below. Look, tap into Michael's expertise. He's been doing this for a while. Don't do it on your own. Follow in the footsteps of those who have been successful before you. Michael, thank you for taking time out of your day and being on the Med Legal Podcast.
My honor, my pleasure.